For those of you who have been in the previous session, you had a little bit of a preview of the topic and some examples. So my name is Saeed Tibet. I'm with Dell Technologies. I focus within the corporate CTO office on IoT strategy within our companies. It's my pleasure to be here with you today. We're talking about connected cars, connected vehicles, and we're going to explore together with our distinguished panelists a number of areas around challenges and opportunities with connected vehicles. As you know, this is a topic that we hear about almost every single day. Yesterday I was listening to Tim Cook from Apple, and we hear from a number of other players within the industry bringing some additional news and updates every single day. This is a very interesting area to look at it also from an industrial IoT point of view. As we look into companies, and in this case, car manufacturers and vehicle manufacturers transforming themselves and looking at the transformation within their ecosystem with the tier 1 suppliers and others. So we'll look into that as well and see how all of this is impacting other industries particularly. So it's my pleasure to have with me Deborah Sherry. Deborah comes with a lot of experience from a number of companies and recently with GE. So Deborah, I'm going to start with you, introduce yourself, and then we'll move on to our colleagues.
Super, thank you. We got the mic on? Wonderful. So wonderful to be with you here today. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Deborah Sherry. I'm the general manager for GE Digital in Europe, and I'm going to introduce GE to you in a second. But what I'm doing is running the business that is bringing cloud-based platforms and software to industry, turning industry digital. My background is very much in software and technology. I relatively recently joined GE. I was in Google for almost 9 years before that on the software and platform side. I also have an Por supuesto. Él tiene una voz más suave que yo. Okay, so now that we've got the basics covered, back to the session, right? I also have a background that spans telephony from Orange, industrial background at Samsung, some other things over the years, but I've always a thread of software and digitization throughout that. A little bit about GE. I think we're one of the largest companies that doesn't yet have the brand you need to know in this market. We're a company of about 301,000 employees. Over 100,000 of those employees are in Europe across 1,000 sites. So although originally American, headquartered in the US, from a global point of view, 70% of our business is outside of the US. So we really are a very, very European company as well. GE, many of you hopefully know GE, General Electric as it was formerly known, 124-year-old company, started by Thomas Edison, the light bulb, right, credited with inventing the light bulb. And we've also had an unbelievable journey of transformation over those 124 years, from light bulbs and white goods to financing, and today we are reinventing ourselves as a digital industrial company. We've spanned many, many industries, and you'll hear more about that today. But one of the reasons that I'm sitting up here in front of you is we already have predicts, a cloud-based platform, and a suite of software applications that drive fleets, trains, monitor airplane engines, and so on. So we're already in the transportation and vehicle business, and this is an extension of what we're all looking at as we look into the future on cars.
Great, thank you so much, Deborah. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
We also have Jose Manuel Carames. Jose, I hope I did a good job saying your name.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Jose comes from Telefonica, and we want to bring that perspective into this discussion, as you know, it's very important.
Thank you very much. Good morning to everybody. My name is Jose Carames, shorter maybe. I'm the director for the Smart Mobility unit at the IoT division in Telefonica. So from Telefonica, we have a global unit of Internet of Things. We are putting a lot of effort beyond, of course, connectivity to deploy to our customers different vertical solutions for mobility, for cities, for energy, and for retail. So from the mobility piece, we are selling today and developing different solutions for our customers across our footprint. So we are really putting focus on this. So happy to be here with all of you. From the opportunity perspective, we think that the connected car is an amazing opportunity. Our forecast is that we are going to have 250 million connected cars in 2020. Each new car sold in that year will be also connected. So this is something that is unstoppable. So I hope you enjoy this panel. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Jose. We also have Dana Spatar. Dana, it's a pleasure to have you here. She brings to us another perspective. As you know, in industrial IoT, and you've heard this for the last couple of days, security is a very important issue, and we want to look at that particularly from a connected vehicles point of view, but really it's also more of a general discussion as well that we're going to make. Dana, please tell us a little bit more.
Thank you very much, Said. Good morning, everyone. My name is Dana Spatar. As Said has said, I'm focusing on cybersecurity. I'm a director with Deloitte, and I'm leading the cybersecurity part of the identity and data protection team out of our Amsterdam office. And I'm here, of course, as Said has mentioned before, to bring a little bit the perspective on security and privacy over this connected vehicles panel. The last couple of days I had conversations in the room here on the floor with some of you, and everybody seems to acknowledge the fact that security is an important topic, but everybody still feels that it is sort of a limiting factor for the development of the IoT. And I like to think of it in terms of this one comparison with cars and brakes, and you might have heard this before, but why do we have brakes in the cars? I can give you a couple of seconds to think about it. So why do we need brakes for our cars? Well, the answer is because like that we can drive faster. And it's a little bit how I think we should be considering security. We need security in order to... Is the mic still on? Can you still hear me? Yes, great. Security should be treated in the same way, right? Like our break towards the enablement of this more faster development and making the best use of the IoT devices around us. So that's the message I would like to bring for today. And just before I stop with my introduction, I wanted to tell you a little bit about the famous DDoS attack that happened last Friday. Probably many of you have thought about it. I'm just planning to put the seed into your minds now in the beginning of the talk. But for those who haven't heard about it, it was one of the largest DDoS attacks in history, and actually connected to IoT devices, probably the first publicly and widely attached to IoT security attack we know of. And its importance is actually not that much around how much damage it did, although many users of Spotify, of Netflix, of LinkedIn have been impacted by it. No credit card details have been stolen, no safety issues appeared out of it. So basically it had a rather limited impact in a way, but it raises a lot of alarms and a lot of bells around what sort of attacks we could be seeing out of the IoT space. So that's something I would like to leave you with. Just think about the smartphones we are all carrying today here, all the smart watches, Fitbits, any other wearables you might be having, and think that at this point in time when we are actually here, all in this room, your devices might actually be used, involved, let's put it like this, in some attacks on specific online targets. That is actually a possibility, and this attack of the Mirai botnet, the DDoS attack of last Friday, is actually proof of that. So just think about it, but we can talk about it a little bit more throughout the talk.
Great, thank you, Dana. So actually, in putting this session together, obviously we worked within the program committee, and I've worked very closely with a good friend and colleague, Helena Lisa sitting here. I wanted to also mention her, but to also say that we came up with actually an interesting idea in bringing a user perspective from a millennial point of view. As you all know, technology is moving at a very fast pace, and I wanted to give actually that opportunity so we can get that perspective from Alexander Solly, who's here with us as a connected vehicle analyst with us. Alexander, can you tell a little bit?
All right. Hi, I'm Alexander Solly. I'm a connected vehicle analyst at Dell Technologies. I have some expertise in cybersecurity and finance and legislation over the last few years. And right now, my main focus is on looking at what regulatory frameworks will govern the Internet of Cars and what business models companies should think about when they're entering this new world of connected vehicles.
Right. Thank you, Alex.
Thank you.
Great. So we're going to start with the first topic. So Deborah, before asking you the question, actually, our CTO, John Rose, when he gave his keynote, mentioned Jeff Immelt with his famous quote around the idea that you go to sleep as a manufacturing company and you wake up as a software company. And you use those keywords in your introduction around transformation, digitalization, et cetera. Can you tell us, GE being a pioneer in industrial IoT, how is that impacting, and where are we looking to learn more from that?
Sure. So we're absolutely at GE going through this transformation process ourselves. It's not finished. You don't do this overnight. But indeed, as a traditional industrial company, at whatever industry you're in, the world's changing rapidly around us, right? We see it on our mobile phones, Uber, you pick a model in the consumer space and it's transforming everything we do in our daily lives. And it's all happening from a technology, a software-based, cloud-based platform, which means a capability to transfer data to the cloud in huge volumes and speed that enable you to analyze that rapidly and make decisions that change fundamentally every part of your business. So we've used this internally. We built a platform, Predix, because we knew we needed to do this. We needed to do it, A, to keep up and make sure that others weren't outperforming us, and B, because we didn't do it ourselves, we'd be disintermediated and somebody else would be doing it. So literally, we went to sleep an industrial business and woke up a software business. Last year, we drove hundreds of millions of dollars in extra productivity ourselves by using Predix and our associated cloud software in order to drive this innovation. And we're a manufacturing business, right? From aviation to healthcare products. We're an oil and gas business. We're a power business, right? You can use this technology to improve the performance of every asset of every type. You can use this technology to improve your manufacturing processes from end to end. We call it the digital thread, literally from inception of the product to delivery of it in the market, and every process in between, from reducing wastage or spillage, or depending on what your area is, to improving processes, be they machine ones or human ones, to understanding the health of your equipment, whether that's a manufacturing piece of equipment or that airplane engine in the sky, right? We have sensors on everything so that we can understand exactly what's going on every step of the process, or for, you know, that airplane engine, like for a car potentially in the future, you know, what exactly is happening on every part of that engine. So we can predict when that piece of equipment, that manufacturing equipment, that airplane engine, that diesel train engine, when it's going to break down or need maintenance before it does, so that you don't experience outage, downtime, more costly repairs. So we've applied that to ourselves. It's not been simple. We've had to both train from within and hire people with real software skills from outside that understand the pace of development and how to deliver this in market. I run GE Digital in Europe. GE Digital is part of our transformation process. We're both a vertical, a P&L that drives business for the company, but we're also a horizontal business, helping to educate, train, and work beside every business in the company to help bring that transformation through the company. So it's still a journey for us. We know we're not done yet, but we're well on the way. We're bringing that learning and that capability in-house to drive productivity and revenue for GE, but we're also bringing that to our clients and to the rest of the world by bringing this technology out to market.
And Deborah, just one more point there. So this would impact the connected vehicle development as we move into the future.
Absolutely.
And vehicle companies becoming software companies as well.
Absolutely. So I think that model is right for every industry, because we are, as our colleagues today will talk to you about even more, you know, the connectedness of the world is already there and racing ahead at an even more rapid rate, and that's going to impact every single industry in the world.
Excellent, thank you. So when we talk about mobility, we talk more than just about connected cars or connected vehicles. I think, Jose, that question is to you. The role of telco providers and telco companies or connectivity is obviously central. So how do you see that, and what are you at Telefónica bringing, and how do you see the industry from that point of view bringing additional capabilities to this industry?
Sure. Of course, as a telco company, is in our NDA at the end to provide connectivity to all our customers, so at the end to connect things in the context we are today. So, so of course for us is the core, and we are doing this through Managed Connectivity Platform, which is our smart end-to-end platform that permits us to connect these type of things. And especially for the connected car piece, I would say that we have special offering for this type of things that is now coming, and we expect a huge volume with a specific offering, taking into account the needs that specific needs that they have. No? For example, split billing, so being able to charge to the OEM manufacturer for the telemetry services, but it's also really important to think in the end to the end consumer, thinking on the services that they need to consume inside the vehicle. So from the connectivity perspective, we are really focused to deliver this service for the connected car space with current technologies and new technologies that are coming the next years to make all this happen. But beyond connectivity, we are working at two more levels. So we are working from the end-to-end perspective with our customers, especially in the B2B space, where we are able to provide from the device to the operations of the service. Today we are connecting light commercial fleets, heavy vehicles, motorbikes, with manufacturers or directly with customers that where they are looking for, especially for efficiencies in their operations. So we are also providing this type of service. We are doing this, especially partnering with top companies in the different spaces or in the different verticals, trying always to bring the best-in-class solutions for our customer. And the second level beyond connectivity is data, big data, where we are working really hard. In fact, 2 weeks ago, we launched a new company brand, which is Luca, a big data brand dedicated to B2B services around big data, and where we are including consultancy services or in own services developed through the data that we are collecting from the network and from the different services.
Great, thank you. So that's kind of an element of innovation that needs to be accelerated even further. And actually, I wanted to thank you and congratulate you for the award that you received last night.
Thank you.
My next question is to Dana. But before I ask you that question, often I talk with some of my colleagues in the financial industry, and one of them, who is an expert who's seen that, particularly in 2008, is begging me, says, you know, when you're looking into this industry, please make sure you talk with your colleagues that we shouldn't have that happen in IoT. So what happened back then with the crisis, how do we see that now, Dana, with all these large amounts of data that are coming through connected vehicles and coming at a fast pace? So it's no more big data, it's big data in real time.
We have a great opportunity to actually use the big data we have around us. Of course, we have also the challenges of starting, I would say, first with the groundwork, right? Just figuring out what sort of data you have, where is it, which one is critical for your business. That both from who is owning it, what are the governance processes around it, that is very important. And that's very important for the business, but also for the security angle of managing this data, because it's the same groundwork, but it will help you as you move forward, because in many cases we see that organizations are actually focusing on the wrong things. We are trying to protect the wrong data that maybe we shouldn't be protecting because it is not that critical. We are spending a lot of money, in security at least, trying to sort of patch or to put security controls around data, and without that initial groundwork around understanding your data. I think that is the first step. As we move forward, of course, the governance around the big data is a very important topic, and I think we can open that conversation probably right now, although it is a little bit controversial on whether we should be having enforced regulations around data, if we should be having data officers in all companies as a main requirement, which is, well, we can create them for ourselves, or we can have others create them. So I think that's one of the interesting questions to answer later on. But as you know, they say data is the new oil, and data leaks are the new oil spills. So I guess that you probably heard this. Everybody's talking about it. So from a security perspective, we all know what the oil spills mean. We do not want to have data leaks. The more technology, the more solutions, and the more smart processes we can put around the data to make sure that we prevent that, the better position we will be in, I would say.
Great, thank you. So I think a natural question to Alex is around the regulatory frameworks. Do we have any that are out there right now? Give us a couple examples of some of the differences that are out there.
Do you mean in relations to
connected vehicles?
In terms of connected vehicles, there's some concern at the American national legislative level to try to better regulate data more through the IoT lens than specifically to connected vehicles. There are around 7 states that now have legislation related to connected vehicles. In a state like Florida, you're allowed to test a connected vehicle without anyone in it. It can just drive itself. Whereas if you want to test a connected vehicle in California, you need to have someone who can take control of the vehicle just in case something happens. There has to be a wheel in the car, brakes, just in case it needs to get slower, etc. And it kind of varies state by state. In Nevada, for instance, you're not allowed to text, and you're not allowed to make phone calls while you're in this connected vehicle. In 43 states, however, there are no regulations at all. It's both neither forbidden nor permitted, which is the way I like to put it.
So you're saying we can go and start testing vehicles already together?
Yeah. Speaking, for that matter, in the European Union, you basically have that forbidden or permitted thing in Britain and Spain, where it's in 26 countries. You need to have that wheel. The autonomy is fine just as long as you can take control.
Excellent. I'm going to have more questions for you afterwards. So I want to come back to Deborah, and I think that's also a question to you, Jose. When we look at the supply chain, I mean, you mentioned that in your first comments. It's obviously important, as you call it, the digital thread, and the elements all come together. When we talk about connected vehicles, it has to be taken in that perspective, right?
For sure. So if you think about it from a supply chain point of view, and every part in that connected vehicle, you need to understand what is going on with every part at any given moment in order to understand the health of that vehicle. So you take the example of the airplane engine that I mentioned to you earlier. So we make a lot of airplane engines in GE, right? Every 2 seconds, we sell an airplane engine. So everybody in this room has flown a GE airplane engine. What you may not know is that there's sensors all over that airplane engine. And we already today have what we call a digital twin, where we literally, every piece of that engine, a perfect replica of that engine exists. Think of it as a mirror image in the cloud. It's a web-based, industrial web-based mirror image. And we take the real data from what is happening to that airplane engine when it's in use. Some of them go through ash clouds. We all know what chaos that causes, right? Some of them go through humid conditions. Some of them are in dry conditions. All sorts of different conditions. Every engine actually needs maintenance at a different time. And the way we typically work with engines or work with machinery, work with equipment is a rota of maintenance. It might be over maintenance, but we have to do it just in case. It might be under maintenance. We might be fixing or repairing or maintaining the wrong thing at that time compared to when it needs it. But we can actually tell with the airplane engine exactly what condition that specific engine is in, and we can maintenance it before it breaks down. So if you extend that into the car, and indeed, we talked a little bit already about fleets are already enabled. They're already digitally enabled. We know a fair bit about them. If you extend it into the car, they're already digitally enabled, not as much as the example I've given about the airplane engine, but that's the type of thing that will absolutely extend into the connected vehicle. I'm sure that will extend first into commercial areas like trucking, shipping, etc. There's already some logistical maintenance and scheduling and various digitally connected services already occurring. But the next step is the maintenance of the engine, a much deeper knowledge of exactly where that truck is, the condition of the shipment if it needs to be monitored as well. The fuel consumption, because of course optimizing fuel consumption can save an awful lot of money, right, in any context, right? So the possibilities are endless because you can monitor and optimize absolutely everything. Sensors are cheap nowadays. They can be everywhere.
Excellent, thank you. So Jose, from your point of view, we will have more and more data. So how are you getting ready to support these supply chains with your customers and partners?
What we are seeing is, we are having new customer trends. We see that the new generations are not interested anymore to own a car, so that's something really relevant. The new generation
not interested anymore owning a car.
Owning a car.
We're going to ask that question to Alex later,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So what we see is that people is interested to consume a service. So what we are seeing is a new mobility service coming across. You can see car sharing, carpooling, and other services. So at the end, what we are seeing is something that remembers to what happened in the 90s with the hardware companies looking for the software and services. So we started to look that the OEMs are also interested in the mobility services. In fact, there's a lot of M&A behind in the last months. So this is something really relevant that is changing. Telefonica, our objective is, in that case, to be the enabler of all of these mobility services to make this happen. Beyond the mobility services, we have the in-vehicle services, the new services coming, where the people is more interested to be also connected inside the car to consume services, and in this part of the story, on this part of the picture, we are going beyond the connectivity and also providing these new services.
Great. Thank you so much. That's good. Like I said, I'm going to go back to that question because that's a really good one. Deborah, I'm going to come back to you, actually.
Sure.
So when we look into these vehicles, particularly when we look at trucks and fleets of vehicles where there's much more opportunity, you can correct me if I'm wrong, we're looking at professional drivers. What happens to them?
I think professional drivers are safer today. Look, we're talking about autonomous vehicles of the future. There's regulatory and other issues. There may be a future quite much further out. I'm sure you can predict that better than me from a regulatory framework that might impact that. But today, in the immediate future, I think professional drivers, they've got a big role to play. That's not going to shift. What will shift is how we optimize the shipment, the time, the fuel, even their time, the optimal time for them to take breaks and so forth. I think from that point of view, it's about improving the industry, but it's not yet an impact on the professional drivers themselves.
So are they going to have new jobs?
So everybody eventually will have new jobs. I think even the OECD recently said that by 2020, something like 65% of the jobs that will drive economies will actually be jobs that don't exist today. So that impacts everyone, not just that industry. But I don't think in 5 years we don't need truck drivers. We don't need, the professional drivers. We're quite a ways away from a truly fully autonomous world, right? So I think from that point of view, they'll have improved jobs. They'll have improved services. We'll be providing services to companies and the drivers, or the companies will be doing that, and with using folks like us on the back end. But they've still got a role to play.
And more opportunity for smaller companies, obviously, to get involved and be more innovative, create new services.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you. You wanted to add something?
Please. I think we have been optimizing the transport industry through telematics in the last 20 years. We are seeing a huge change, so we expect a deep transformation of the industry. And I think that the two drivers are two drivers. So the technology, where we see that the technology is progressing really, really quick, so we expect to have the technology ready in the next years. Let's see if it's 5 years or 10 years. But 2 days ago, we saw the news that Uber delivered with the first autonomous truck 50,000 bottles of beer as a first autonomous truck delivery. So that means that the technology is coming. Mm-hmm. But in the other hand, that for me is the big question mark is the regulation. So we will have the technology needed in 5 years, 10 years, don't know. But here the question mark is the regulation, that for sure will be different by geographies, different by use cases. So we don't need to forget about the regulation, which is a really key piece in all this story.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to come back to you, Dana. So when I talk to a lot of car manufacturers, and particularly the top ones, security is obviously one of the biggest topics for them. But a car is not a computer. It's very different, even though it's becoming a smart machine and fairly advanced computing data centers, as we call it within our company. So how is that being addressed? Because that's one of their top issues, their top challenges at the moment.
Yes, so it is a very good question. Indeed, I think maybe it makes sense to start with this view on the fact that IoT devices in general are not really targets per se for cyber criminals. And what I mean with this is there are exceptions, of course, and the world might be moving in a different direction. But if we think of some of the IoT devices we have around, if we are talking about, I don't know, a fridge which is connected to the internet, if we are talking about some of the smaller IoT devices, it's a little bit of a different conversation. But for the car specifically, you could have criminals getting a car driven into a dam, which has already happened. There are security experts out there testing cars and voluntarily showing the vulnerabilities and posting them on the websites on what things can be done. But the most important thing is that most of the IoT devices we are having also around connected vehicles are actually ways to get to your network, to get to some other more relevant information for cyber criminals. Now, of course, what's relevant for cyber criminals depends on the type of data you have, depends on the business you are in. You might be very interesting for nation states, for other nation states. You might be very more interesting for financial criminals, just looking for financial gains. But the thing to keep in mind is that indeed it's IoT devices are a vector. So basically the means to get into the network from a security perspective and get some other types of information than actually accessing that specific device. In terms of things that we should probably start with, if I think of it, starting with embedding security and privacy requirements from the very beginning in the design and manufacturing of our IoT devices and the processes around them, that's the first step. Now, the next thing, and we talked about it, and Jose mentioned it as well, and Alex as well, I think, is the regulation question. Shall we actually regulate security? And there are, of course, we all, probably all in this room have bad experiences with regulation which didn't go well. So in general, in security, we have this sort of tendency of staying away from it. We don't think that this is the solution for the future. However, we did regulate safety. So we actually have safety regulation. We want to make sure that if you are driving a car, it's driving, the brakes are working. If they are not working, you might be killing yourself. Shall we regulate security in the same way? Probably we need some sort of regulation, and we need to support this. And again, I'm not a fan of over-regulating ourselves. I also, if I think of cookies and a lot of other examples of regulation which had a good intention but went bad, I think it's probably a difficult task, but we should be starting somewhere there. And then the last point I had, and that's a little bit more controversial, is about the relationship between your organizations and the hacking community out there. There is a very active vulnerability market out there. So actually, hackers, knowing what the different vulnerabilities or finding vulnerabilities in your organizations might be selling the data, you want to make sure that you have the right bug bounty programs in place to incentivize them to give the data to you. Now, Tesla is probably one of the best examples of companies having a very good bug bounty program, and I don't know if GE or Telefonica, if you are also applying bug bounty programs, but it would be interesting to know.
Excellent. I think we can ask that question, but actually, I want to go to Alex, and Jose brought up a good question. You millennials, you don't want to buy a car anymore? I mean, are you going to live without a car?
I know that for many of us, the car is supposed to be about independence.
So we want to know that, right? I want to ask that question to millennials, right?
Yeah. The idea that you don't need to ask someone to get you a ride, just be able to go off on your own and go wherever the car can take you. But for us millennials, 25% of us don't actually have driver's licenses, and I'm one of those 25% guys. For those of us who don't have cars or don't feel like they need to have one, but we don't see the ticket to get from place to place, we have good public transportation now. Some of us have access to ride-sharing services, and the rest of us have access to taxis. So to us, a car is just a thing that spends 95% of its time parked, and you have to pay a lot of money to have one. You need to pay for insurance. You need to make sure you have a garage to store it the time you don't have it parked somewhere else. It's just another big expense to us.
So that's less business for car manufacturers. I hope we don't have any in the room. So.
Yeah, but I'm not expecting more cars.
But I'm going to go back to Deborah, to you. I mean, to that point that Alex has made. From a fleet of vehicles, trucks, etc., how is that going to impact kind of the various elements of it?
So a world of the future where you can tell the machine health of things and so on could be a world where, if indeed millennials are buying fewer cars, we might be looking at car as a service, a ride service, a shared ownership model, or a more complex rental model than what we see today. The right car at the right time, the right size, the right type of look, feel, etc. that you want at the moment, right? So it might be car as a service. So manufacturers might rightly be very, very worried. What's going to happen if my car sales go down, right? So your Ford, your Volvo, your Renault, whoever you are, you're going, how do I get into the service business, and how do I make this a profitable, manageable service business, right? Suddenly you're a car with, today, cars only have about, I don't know, roughly 60, a little bit more in some cases, sensors on them. You'll have hundreds and hundreds of sensors on that car. It's a lot of data. You can manage car as service. You want car as a service, it can't break down, you're not going to do the maintenance, so you can know the health, air pressure on the tires, the engine, the oil, the fuel, everything, right? You can, again, maximize the optimization of your fuel usage. You can make sure that the car is in the right condition. You can prevent that car from being used if you're discovering that it's not in the right condition. You can maximize fleet location, journeys, everything you need based on customer hiring patterns, right? So this would turn it into a profitable service. Now there is another layer of complexity on that I don't know, maybe Alex could speak to a little bit, because that raises the issue, or indeed Dana, right? That raises the issue of data and personal data and who owns all of that data, because somebody will have given their personal details to rent that car, and is that part, if that's part of the package and their hiring pattern, whose is it? Is it the company's? How do we regulate for that? So it does raise some other questions that are as yet unanswered, but the models for the future can be served by digital industrial capabilities. I think one of the big barriers at the moment, though, is when we go from 60 sensors to hundreds of sensors, that's a volume and velocity of data that, although we have connected vehicles today and are doing that kind of management, we're not doing it at that type of capacity to ingest and analyze data. And even the tools that people are using today, the software tools, they're using things like relational databases instead of graph-based ones and so on. Like, they're just using tools that aren't designed to handle that volume of data and real-time decisioning. So I think we still have a ways to go to get the industry to embrace the tools that now exist, like Predix and APM, the tools that we at GE have and others have. They exist, we can use them, but they're not yet in use. So we need to solve the capability angle, and we need to solve the regulatory and privacy angles, and indeed the security angles to get there, but it's certainly all possible.
Thank you, Deborah. I want to leave a couple minutes, I think we have a few minutes left, to the audience if we have any questions. I'm sure you may have some questions, yes? We got one.
Hello, good morning.
Yes.
My name is Per Lindberg. I work for Volvo Cars.
Great, you must be happy that we mentioned you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the interesting discussion.
Thank you.
So we actually manufacture these vehicles that you talk about, and one of the challenges that we see developing new services, I mean, we know that all cars will be connected sooner rather than later, right? But we also see ourselves becoming part of this much larger ecosystem around the cars. And that, I think, is where we see one of the main challenges, is that when interfacing toward smart cities, smart charging, all of these things, these are not standardized. So that means that we need to go out to every city, every electricity company, and find these interfaces. And yeah, I wanted to ask the panel if you have any view on this, on how we can manage this.
Thank you very much. This is a great question. I mean, you were here for the last couple of days, like all of you. You've heard about the challenges on interoperability and security and the coexistence of all of these systems together as a big ecosystem. So any one of you can take that question, I'm pretty sure. Just a brief answer, so we can maybe take another question.
Okay, thanks for the question. I think that, of course, there are other challenges. So how do you connect the connected cars with the infrastructure, with the cities? But I think that are not can be different streamlines, different stories that can merge at some moment. So today we have a clearly path to connect all cars and to start providing new services that will merge at some moment with the electric car piece and the smart cities piece, but it's something that have its own path, and at some moment I think that will merge.
Great, thanks, Jose. And we can take that offline, I'm sure, for more detail later. One more question, I think that's all we have time for. Yeah, please. Be brief, please. Thank you.
Yes. Any of you would like to touch on cars being used for cross-selling services, it becoming a part of your lifestyle to sell? As number of cars reduce, the revenue opportunities could be by recommending things around you.
Sure. So I touched on that a little bit, I think. I think in essence, as Jose Manuel said, you know, the opportunities for different business models are going to multiply as we get smart cities, and you know, GE is also working in lighting and smart buildings, extending into smart cities. So as we connect up technology in every sense, sensing where cars are, not only from the car itself, but traffic in the cities and so on, I think you'll end up with, when you take the millennial point of view, car sharing, ride sharing, all sorts of business models. And in a future thinking world, 10, 20 odd years or so from now, the technologies that can help drive that will not only be on the cars themselves, but embedded in, you know, in lights, in all sorts of fixtures around the cities, so that actually we have very optimized services. And who knows whether it's going to be cities, companies providing infrastructure, just the automotive companies. There's so many different places from which that technology will be delivered and the service delivered will emanate, that it could be anybody jumping in to build a revenue stream from that.
Great. Thank you, Deborah. I think we have pretty much run out of time at this point. Please join me in thanking our panelists, and I hope everyone enjoyed this session and learned something from the experts.